All right, let's dive into a real classic, Don Quixote.
Yeah.
By Miguel de Cervantes. We've got a whole bunch of sources here.
Yeah.
Stuff about Cervantes himself,
Right.
critical essays, and of course we've got
Yes.
passages from the novel itself. You probably know the windmill scene. I mean, who doesn't?
Right.
But there's so much more to this book.
Yeah.
It's full of humor and satire.
Yeah.
Some really, really deep ideas that I think we're going to uncover today.
Absolutely. It's incredible how Cervantes took this seemingly simple story
Right.
of a knight-errant and used it to explore these
Right.
huge, like, universal themes.
Okay.
We're talking idealism versus reality, the power of stories themselves.
Yeah.
Even what it means to be human.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's start with the man behind the masterpiece.
Yeah.
Who is Miguel de Cervantes.
Right.
Our sources paint a picture of a guy who lived quite a life.
Mm-hmm.
Military service,
Mm-hmm.
time as a captive,
Yeah.
even tried to make it as a writer,
Oh, yeah.
but didn't quite find the success that he hoped for
No.
during his lifetime.
Really fascinating, though, when you think about it. It's almost like
Yeah.
Don Quixote itself was this
Huh?
kind of unexpected triumph.
Yeah.
It wasn't the work he thought would
Yeah.
make him famous.
Yeah.
And I think that actually adds to the layers of irony and satire
For sure. For sure.
that are kind of woven into the book, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, totally.
Oh.
And speaking of context, this book didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right.
We're talking 17th century Spain.
Mm-hmm.
The end
Golden.
is the Spanish Golden Age.
Yep.
Our sources say that chivalric romances, basically the fantasy novels of the day,
Yeah. Yeah.
were
Hugely
super popular.
Yeah.
It's like, picturing everyone today glued to the latest epic fantasy series
That's a great way to put it.
or, whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. Spain's influence was on the decline, but people were still kind of holding on to these romantic notions of chivalry and knightly adventures. And Cervantes just tapped right into that, He used those familiar tropes, and he also kind of turned them on their head a little bit.
Totally. So let's meet our main character,
Okay.
Don Quixote.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's a middle-aged, low-ranking nobleman.
Right.
Hidalgo, the sources call him.
Mm-hmm.
Who has gone completely bonkers from reading all of these knightly tales.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's literally out there thinking giants exist.
Yeah. He renames himself Don Quixote de la Mancha.
That's right.
And he decides to become a knight-errant.
Yep.
Sets off on this series of misadventures.
That's right.
That are, they're comical, but also kind of tragic.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's Dulcinea del Toboso.
Ah, Dulcinea.
This peasant woman he's totally obsessed with.
Yeah.
Even though they've never met.
Right. Never even met her.
He's created this perfect, idealized image of her.
In his mind.
In his mind. Talk about a case of unrequited love.
Yeah. Don Quixote, he really is this fascinating blend of the ridiculous and then the deeply human.
Yeah.
He's clinging to these grand ideals.
Yeah.
But the world around him just keeps reminding him about how harsh reality can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads us to the adventures themselves.
Yes.
Part 1 of the book is packed with these wild encounters.
Right.
That almost always go hilariously wrong for Don Quixote.
They really do.
You've got the iconic windmill scene.
Of course.
Of course, where he mistakes him for giants.
Right. Which has become like the ultimate symbol of his delusion, right? It's like Cervantes is saying, look, here's this guy so caught up in his fantasies that he can't even see the world for what it is.
Totally. Then there's the time he tries to free some galley slaves, thinking he's doing this noble deed, and they end up robbing him blind.
Oh, yeah. Robin blind.
And you can't help but laugh.
You can't help but laugh.
At the absurdity of it all.
It's true.
But it also kind of makes you feel for the guy.
Right.
It
really highlights how Don Quixote's rigid adherence to this knightly code can just totally backfire in these spectacular ways. He's trying to live by this set of rules that just don't apply in the real world.
Exactly. And who could forget the blanket tossing?
Oh, the blanket tossing.
It gets flung in the air.
And flung right in the air.
At the end. Not quite the heroic image I'm sure he had in mind.
No.
It's like Cervantes is using physical comedy to emphasize how out of touch Don Quixote is with reality.
And those early chapters, they're just full of this kind of slapstick humor.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, back in Cervantes' time, would have been a huge hit with audiences.
Right.
But it's not just about the laughs.
Right.
There's always this deeper layer of satire and social commentary.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of at play, you know.
Absolutely.
Things get really interesting in part 2.
Okay.
Don Quixote's adventures, they've become famous.
Right.
And that fame starts to affect how people interact with him.
Interesting.
It's like he steps into this world where his own legend precedes him.
I see.
Yeah, and that's where the metafiction really kicks in.
Right.
The characters in part 2, they've actually read part 1.
Oh, wow.
Of Don Quixote, so they already know.
So they're in on it.
They're in on the joke.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
They know about his exploits, his delusions.
Right.
All of that.
Yeah, that makes for some funny situations, I bet.
Oh, yeah, especially with the Duke and Duchess.
Oh, tell me about that.
Oh, those two? Yeah. They decide to have some fun with Don Quixote. Staging these elaborate pranks.
Pranks?
Oh, yeah, they play on his fantasies.
Give me an example.
Okay, so, like, they convince him that he's flying through the air on a wooden horse.
Okay, now that's funny.
It's, like, straight out of one of his chivalric romances.
Right.
But of course, it's all a fabrication.
Of course.
It's all made up. And, you know, I think Cervantes is using these scenarios to really comment on the nature of storytelling itself.
Okay.
Like how fiction can kind of blur with reality and how people can be manipulated by their own expectations.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
But amidst all the humor and the satire,
Right.
part 2 also goes into some more serious themes.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, we get the story of Cardenio.
Okay.
He's a man driven mad by love and betrayal.
So it's not all fun and games.
No, it's a reminder that even in this world of
Right.
knights and giants, there's still room for these very human emotions. Like heartbreak and despair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cardenio's story, it really adds
Yeah.
this emotional depth to the novel.
Right.
You know, contrasting with Don Quixote's more outlandish adventures.
Right. So it's a balance.
Yeah.
It's like Cervantes is showing us
Okay.
that even the most fantastical stories are ultimately grounded in human experience.
Interesting.
And then there's the episode with Marcella
Okay.
and Chrysostomo,
Okay.
another love story,
Uh-huh.
that doesn't exactly have a happy ending.
Right.
Chrysostomo, he's totally head over heels for Marcella,
Okay.
but she values her independence
Yeah.
and refuses to be tied down by his affections.
I see.
This episode, it raises all sorts of questions like unrequited love, freedom of choice,
Right.
the dangers of placing unrealistic expectations on other people.
Interesting.
It's definitely a more somber note
Sure.
in a novel that's often filled with laughter,
Right.
but I think it adds to the complexity.
Of the whole narrative.
Okay, what about Sancho Panza?
Oh, Sancho. Well, we see him continuing to evolve.
In what way?
He's still motivated by that promise of a governorship.
Of course.
But he's also developing, I think, a deeper understanding of the world and a genuine affection for Don Quixote.
It's nice.
Yeah, I think Sancho's growth is one of the most satisfying parts of the novel.
Okay.
He starts out as this simple, somewhat greedy fellow.
Right.
But through his experiences, he becomes wiser.
Yeah.
More compassionate, more capable of seeing the nuances of life.
That's good.
He's constantly challenging Don Quixote's worldview, even if it's just through witty remarks and observations.
Right.
Like, do you remember that classic debate
I don't know. Refresh my memory.
about whether a barber's basin is actually Mambrino's helmet?
Oh, right.
That scene, it just perfectly captures their dynamic.
How so?
Well, you've got Don Quixote.
Yeah.
He's blinded by his fantasies. He sees what he wants to see.
Okay.
And then you've got Sancho.
Yeah. With his feet firmly planted on the ground.
Right.
He sees things for what they are.
But despite their differences, their bond deepens as the story goes on, right?
Oh, absolutely. They may drive each other crazy.
Sure.
But they also need each other.
In what way?
Well, Don Quixote needs Sancho's grounding presence. And Sancho needs Don Quixote's unwavering belief in him.
That's nice.
It's a real testament to the power of friendship.
Yeah.
And how even the most unlikely pairs can find common ground and learn from each other.
Yeah, I like that.
And then there's that mind-bending metafictional twist.
Oh, yeah. Remind me about that.
Okay, so in part 2, Cervantes introduces this character who claims to be the real author of Don Quixote's story.
No way.
Yeah, it's like he's taking this idea of blurring fiction and reality to a whole new level. unravel.
Wow.
So this supposed author,
Yeah.
his name is Sida Hamet Benengeli.
Okay.
He's a Moorish historian.
And he claims to have found the original manuscript.
Of the adventures.
Yeah, of Don Quixote's adventures.
So wait.
So now we've got Cervantes.
Right, the actual author.
The actual author, and this fictional author, Benengeli.
Oh my gosh.
And Cervantes is pretending...
He's just translating it?
He's just translating Benengeli's work.
That is so meta.
It's brilliant.
It really is.
It's a way of playing with the reader's expectations.
Right.
And making us question the nature of authorship.
Yeah.
Storytelling. Like,
who's really in control?
who's really in control of the narrative?
Right.
How much of what we read can we actually believe?
Wow, that's really, really interesting.
It adds a whole other layer of complexity.
To a story that's already full of surprises.
Exactly.
Yeah, but beyond all the metafiction and satire, Don Quixote is also...
It's a deeply human story.
Yeah.
It explores the complexities of good and evil,
Right.
the struggles we all face,
Yeah.
trying to make sense of the world, and the power of dreams, even when those dreams lead us astray.
Yeah, I like it.
Don Quixote, he may be delusional,
Sure.
but he's also driven by this...
Strong sense of justice.
Yeah, a strong sense of justice, a desire to do good.
And Sancho Panza.
Yeah.
He's got his flaws, but...
He embodies that simple wisdom and loyalty.
That we all admire.
That we all admire.
They represent the best and worst of humanity.
I think so.
And their journey reminds us that life is full of contradictions, absurdities, and unexpected moments of grace.
Speaking of journeys, Don Quixote's eventually comes to an end.
Of course.
He returns home, seemingly a changed man.
Okay.
He renounces knight-errantry.
Really?
And it seems like he's regained his sanity.
Wow, so a happy ending.
Well, even in his final moment.
There's some ambiguity.
There's a sense of ambiguity.
Like, did he really give up on his dreams?
Yeah, did he truly give up on his dreams?
Or was he just resigned to his fate?
That's a question that's been debated.
For centuries.
By readers, for centuries.
And that's part of what makes it so enduring, right?
It's a novel that leaves us with more questions than answers.
It makes us think.
It prompts us to think deeply.
About all these things.
About the nature of reality, the power of imagination.
Yeah.
The complexities of the human heart.
Absolutely. And those iconic windmills.
Ah, the wind.
They've become so much more.
Oh, they're not just a funny set piece anymore.
What are they?
They're a symbol of Don Quixote's idealism.
Okay.
His willingness to fight for what he believes in.
Right.
Even when it seems impossible.
Even when it seems impossible. And
yeah, and in a way, we all have our own windmills to tilt at.
That's a great point.
Those challenges that seem insurmountable.
Right.
Those dreams that feel out of reach.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Don Quixote, he may have faced his final windmill, but his story's journey continues through the ages.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think about how this book,
it's incredible,
published way back in the 17th century, still has so much to say to us.
I know. And it's not just about the story itself. I mean, Don Quixote is considered like a landmark in literary history.
Right.
It's often hailed as like the first modern novel.
That's a big claim.
It is a big claim.
What makes it so groundbreaking?
Well, I mean, you think about the novels that came before it, they were often like straightforward romances,
Yeah.
Tales of chivalry, or just stories with much simpler plots, simpler characters. Don Quixote, it breaks free from all those conventions.
So how's it do that?
Well, for one thing, Cervantes brought this psychological depth to his characters. Like, Don Quixote isn't just a comical figure who's driven mad by books. He's a complex individual with motivations and desires and flaws that make him really relatable.
Despite his eccentricities.
Despite his eccentricities, exactly. No. And Sancho Panza, he's not just a sidekick there for comic relief. He's a fully realized person with his own wit and wisdom and this evolving moral compass.
Yeah. And the novel structure is also pretty innovative.
Oh, it's sprawling.
Yeah.
Multi-layered.
Different settings.
Weaving together all these different settings and storylines and even those metafictional elements that we talked about earlier.
It feels like Cervantes was really experimenting with the form of the novel.
Pushing the boundaries of what storytelling could achieve.
Yeah. And let's not forget the social commentary.
Oh, right.
That's woven throughout the novel.
Yeah.
Cervantes, he's satirizing.
It is.
the rigid social hierarchies of the time.
Yes.
The obsession with chivalry. This contrast between idealistic dreams and the often harsh realities of life.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to society, forcing readers to confront
the absurdities, the injustices.
The injustices of their world.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so relevant.
I agree.
It's not just a humorous adventure.
Yeah.
It's a work of immense literary and social significance.
It continues to resonate.
This is centuries later.
With readers centuries later, yeah.
And it reminds us that the greatest stories are the ones that challenge our
preconceived notions.
Preconceived notions. They make us laugh. But they also make us think deeply about the world around us.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into Don Quixote,
yes,
I want to leave you with one final thought. This novel is full of contradictions.
It is.
Just like its main character, it's funny, yet profound, absurd, yet insightful.
Tragic, yet hopeful.
Tragic, yet ultimately hopeful.
Yeah.
And it's a story that defies...
easy categorization.
Easy categorization. That's what makes it so brilliant. So as you navigate your own life, remember the lessons that we've uncovered. Embrace the adventure. Face your windmills with courage and determination. And never underestimate the power of stories to inspire and challenge and transform us. And until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of adventure alive.